the CineSnob Podcast.
Hey everybody, and welcome to episode 339 of the CineSnob Podcast. My name is Cody Villafana. We are without Jocelyn Duran this week, but joining us for the first time in, gosh, I don't even know how long. It's been several months. Kiko Martinez is back. Kiko, welcome back to the show.
Hey, thank you very much. Yeah, it's been a few weeks at least, since before July. Early July, I guess.
Yeah, June 29th, it looks like, is the last time we had you on covering F1 and Megan 2.0.
Very cool.
Yeah.
It's been quite a journey in the past couple of weeks, but glad to be back.
Yeah, and at some point we'll have the three of us back as a whole, but that week is not this week.
Scared her off.
Yeah.
For some reason.
Yeah, she figured out you were coming back, and she was like, I need the week off. But it's been an eventful week here, and on Friday, I got back, or I guess Thursday night, I got back from Austin, where I spent a week in Austin at the 20th edition of Fantastic Fest. And had a really great time as usual, and wanted to spend some time kind of like talking about my experience as I do every year. So the festival is 8 days. I stayed for 7 of the 8 days. It was a pretty solid lineup. I would say, I watched, including screeners, 32 movies playing at Fantastic Fest. And out of those 32, I would say like nothing that I watched was like unwatchable or like really bad. I would say maybe like the lowest score I gave was like a C maybe. And everything else was either like solid and watchable, or there were a few things that I thought were really good. I wanted to spend some time talking about my personal favorites, but first, I think a lot of people are interested to hear sometimes about like the secret screenings. So this year there were 4 secret screenings. The first one was Silent Night, Deadly Night, a remake of, I guess, like an 80s horror movie.
Of the same
my
name,
least,
right?
What's that?
Of the same name?
Yes, of the same name. I think there was a franchise, kind of a controversial movie because I think it featured a killer Santa Claus, which is I guess a novel idea now that seems controversial. Probably my least favorite of the secret screenings. I was not super into it. Of course, we'll talk about it later this year when it comes out. As we will a lot of these other movies. Secret screening number 2 was Bugonia, the new Yorgos Lanthimos movie, which I would call like mid-tier Yorgos. It's not my favorite. It's not my least favorite. It falls somewhere in the middle. Jesse Plemons is incredible in the movie. Emma Stone's good too, but Plemons is just, that guy is always good, but especially good here. Secret screening number 3 was the movie that we're talking about today, One Battle After Another, Paul Thomas Anderson's new movie. And so we'll kind of save that for later on. And then the last secret screening was kind of a curveball, which was a movie that's coming out next year in January called Good Luck, Have Fun, Don't Die, which is a new movie directed by Gore Verbinski. It's basically like a kind of like a sci-fi satire, and I don't want to give too much away because we'll talk about it in January, but kind of like a really interesting, like I really like the first 2/3 of the movie. The third act I think really doesn't do much for me, but it's like a really dark satire that kind of goes places that I really haven't seen a lot of movies go to. It's very Black Mirror in its sort of like dystopian way that it sort of addresses like technology and people on their phones and stuff like that, but also like touches on and satirizes school shootings in a really like interesting way, specifically sort of like the way in which it feels like the country is sort of being desensitized to it a little bit, and like it's just become commonplace where like it's not that surprising or shocking anymore, and like really leaning hard into that. The movie was written by a guy named Matthew Robinson, who wrote and also directed the movie The Invention of Lying with Ricky Gervais. You remember that movie?
Yeah, that was okay. It was mid for me myself.
Yeah, but again, like that was kind of like an interesting concept where like, you know, it was an alternate reality in which like lying doesn't exist and people are straightforward, and then they end up sort of inventing lying and stuff like that. Anyway, it's an interesting idea, and so and also this guy also wrote the Dora and the Lost City of Gold movie.
Weird.
Interestingly, yeah.
Yeah, I just saw Gore Verbinski. I didn't realize he hadn't made a movie in a decade. So.
Yeah, I did not realize that either, I guess. What was the last one he made?
A Cure for Wellness.
Oh, that was a decade ago.
Yeah.
Wow.
So it's been a while. I mean, he's best known for his Pirates of the Caribbean franchise, of course, and then he won an Oscar for Rango. So.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah, an interesting director for sure. And that's a movie that I'll look forward to kind of talking about. Sam Rockwell stars in that movie and is pretty great in it. It also stars Juno Temple and Michael Pena as Zazie Beetz, Haley Lee Richardson. But yeah, so those were those were the secret screenings this year. In terms of my favorite films I saw 32 movies, which is a lot. But there were a few that stood out. My two favorites of the festival, the first one was my top movie of the festival, which is a movie called The Holy Boy, which is an Italian movie, and I know that this term, people don't really like this term anymore and use it maybe even in a derogatory sense, but like the idea of like elevated horror. The idea that a movie is basically, exploring deeper concepts and doing it through like a horror lens kind of thing. And this movie basically is about this like town in Italy that like everyone in the town is happy, and nobody is like experiencing any kind of like emotional distress, even though that there was like a terrible train accident there years ago. And what you find out is that in the town, there is like a teenage boy who, if you embrace him, basically all of your pain goes away when you do that. And he is turned into somewhat of like a cultish religious figure within the town, and it's all surrounding this this teacher / coach who goes to this town after suffering a tragedy, ends up developing a relationship with the boy, ends up hugging him and having the pain take away. And it's this really interesting exploration of like grief and trauma and healing, and how some people like may bury themselves in either ignoring, stuffing things down, or even like exploring like religion and stuff like that as a means of coping instead of like actually handling and confronting grief and loss and healing. And it's just a really interesting movie. It's shot and filmed and directed extremely well. This director, I don't have his name on the top of my head, but I'm going to get it real quick. Pablo Stripoli, really exciting movie, and really look forward to when more people are getting to see that. My second favorite movie of the festival was a movie called If I Had Legs, I'd Kick You. And that's going to be out pretty soon here. So I think October 10th is when it comes out. So I won't spend too much time on it, but it is a movie that premiered at Sundance, written and directed by Mary Bronstein. And it stars Rose Byrne, and as well as A$AP Rocky, and in an acting dramatic role, Conan O'Brien in the movie. And what's that?
How does he do?
He's fine. I mean, he's not like amazing or anything, but he plays the part well. He plays her therapist basically, and in this movie is basically the best way to describe it. And I'm not the first person to make this connection, but it's very sort of like Uncut Gems in its like style and tone, and it's something where like there's like a lot of cascading events where things just keep happening and happening and happening. There's a lot in the sound design. It's like claustrophobic and chaotic, and there's a lot of like really close-ups on Rose Byrne, and it's basically those movies that and again, I'm not a mother, so I can't really speak to the effectiveness of this, but there's been movies in recent years that have tried to like capture either from like a horror lens or like a creative lens, sort of like the struggles of motherhood. You had like actually like Mother, Darren Aronofsky's Mother. You had like Night Bitch. I think that was last year. Babadook. This to me is one of the few that like really seems to like get that right and do a really good job of sort of like it's Rose Byrne basically struggling through a series of events all pertaining to like being a mother of, you know, like she has a sick child, and just sort of it takes place over a series of days of things just sort of falling apart around her. She's really amazing in it. I really like the tone of the movie. I really like the sort of you know, chaos of everything that's going on. I think maybe some people will be like maybe overstimulated by it, but for me, I really enjoyed it. Besides that, there were a couple of other movies worth mentioning. One of the movies, again, and this is like my like tier 2 of movies. One of them was called Luger, and Luger is a movie from Spain, and you know, very kind of like straightforward crime drama. And you know, when you're at Fantastic Fest, you're getting thrown a lot of horror at you, and it's really nice to have like something that's just like an action movie or a martial arts movie or something like this, which is a crime drama. You know, basically about these two guys who are basically like crime partners who come into possession of like a Nazi Luger, a gun, and basically have to fight off other people trying to get the gun back. And yeah, just a really solid, I would say, you know, crime drama. It's filmed and shot in a way where the violence feels really realistic and kind of like very lived in, and it does a good job of world building, yeah, I thought like a really solid crime drama. And then I also really like this movie called A Useful Ghost. This is a movie from Thailand, and it's so have you seen a lot of I don't know how to say his name, but I think it's Quentin Dupuis or Dupuis, the French director who has made movies like Rubber, the movie about like the killer tire, and like Wrong. He did a movie called Smoking Causes Coughing that I really liked. Have you seen much or any of his stuff?
I'm looking at his films right now. I've only seen Rubber, which was his first one, right?
No, I think he's made a few. He made a few prior to that. Well, no, he made one movie. Yeah, I guess that's his first big one, because it looks like his first one was like a shorter film. But yeah. This movie really reminded me of one of his films. So basically, it's a movie, A Useful Ghost, again, Thai movie, about a woman who dies from like a respiratory disease, and her spirit gets like goes into a vacuum cleaner, and basically it's about like spirits after people die going into like inanimate objects, and then like people developing relationships with the inanimate objects. So like her, I guess, widower basically kind of like develops this close relationship with a vacuum cleaner, and you get to see sort of like the background and all of that. And yeah, just a really creative movie. There's a lot of really great absurdist humor in it, and like kind of like goofy, you know, Looney Tunes style stuff, like really funny stuff of just like a vacuum cleaner walking around and people treating it like it's human. A movie that I feel like loses me a little bit in the third act, but its dark comedy is really well done. It's really well filmed and put together. And yeah, I another movie that I really enjoyed. It won the Grand Prix for Critics Week at the Cannes Film Festival. I don't know what that is, but it won it. So good for them. And yeah, I look forward to again being able to talk about that a little bit more down the line. So those are my.
Does somebody win? Like is there a big prize at Fantastic Fest? Or
yeah, there's a jury award, and the jury award went to a movie called The Plague. A movie that I thought was pretty good. I gave it a B. It's probably like right below these four as like maybe my fifth favorite. Also premiered at Cannes, and that's like a sort of horror movie, a psychological thriller more about like bullying. and it's an Australian movie. And actually, excuse me, that's not right. It's Romanian / American. I don't know why. Oh, I said Australian because Joel Edgerton is in it. But yeah, it's a a really interesting story about bullying through like a very basically bullying is represented by like a physical manifestation that is referred to as the plague in the movie. And so that was a good movie, had a lot of good like child acting in it. And then there was a best horror movie jury award, which went to a movie called The Vial, which was a horror movie out of I believe Abu Dhabi or like United Arab Emirates. And that was basically a movie again, like, talking about horror movies, talking about deeper subjects, a lot of, that was basically a horror movie about the culture of, like polygamy in that place. So sort of like, a woman, kind of gets displaced by a man who has like a second wife and basically like intrudes upon her and her family and stuff like that. So, yeah, and so those were kind of like the big awards in my favorite films. I also went to a couple of events that were pretty fun. I went to something called the Benson Movie Interruption, which is, I think I talked about it here last episode, but it's an event where the comedian Doug Benson and a bunch of comics sit in the front row of the theater and they watch a movie that is brought by the audience and basically just make fun of it. On mic for the movie. And so this year's movie was a movie that I had not seen before, that was not great, called The Beastmaster, a movie from 1982. Have you seen The Beastmaster?
Mm-mm.
Yeah,
I don't even know. I mean, I've heard of it, but I don't even know who's in it. It sounds like a, what is his name from He-Man?
Oh yeah, yeah. Well, it stars Mark Singer in the lead role. Rip Torn is in the movie. John Amos is in the movie in smaller roles. Not a great movie, but fun to make fun of. And I also went to the Found Footage Festival, which is, if you've seen the documentary Chop and Steal, it's those guys who basically collect weird VHS tapes that they find and comb through them and edit them together for a show. And that was really fun and a great way to sort of break up. When you're there, you can watch 5 to 6 movies a day. So it's nice to have these events throughout the week when you start hitting that wall a little bit. But yeah, I mean, I just had a really great time, and Fantastic Fest has been great for years. And I would say from like the press side of things, it was maybe one of the best years that we've had just in terms of the way it's set up. So I want to thank Fonz PR and the people at Fantastic Fest for extending the invitation and to attend. And yeah, I mean, to me, there's like nothing better than waking up first thing in the morning, going into the movie theater, staying all day, leaving at 1:00 in the morning, sleeping and doing the same thing over and over again for, a week in a row. So I had a really great time. And, the festival has become one of my favorites. And, again, like the quality is really kind of amped up, in recent years where, like I said, I think the lowest, like on Letterboxd, I gave a movie was like 2 stars. And those were the movies that I liked the least. And everything else I would say was better than that, in the case of, something like The Holy Boy, like maybe even might make my top 10 this year. So we'll see. So, and there was a movie that obviously that I also really liked that I left out because I think we're going to be talking about it in just a second. So, yeah, I think that's all. So again, thank you to Fonz PR. Thank you to Fantastic Fest. And, look forward to hopefully being back next year. So I will go ahead and move on, and we'll talk about some movies.
Here are this week's reviews.
So first up this week, we have One Battle After Another. This is the next film from director Paul Thomas Anderson. His first since Licorice Pizza 4 years ago. It is a movie that, as I said before, was secret screening number 3 at Fantastic Fest. And it is a movie that follows an ex-revolutionary played by Leonardo DiCaprio, who must rescue his daughter from a corrupt military official, played by Sean Penn. And yeah, I mean, I think, I mean, for this one, I'll kind of let you do a lot of the talking, as you and I are kind of on different ends of the spectrum on Paul Thomas Anderson. For me, he's a director that I appreciate more than I enjoy. I've seen all of his films except for Hard Eight. I've never seen Hard Eight, but I've seen all of his films. But like Boogie Nights is the only one I've seen more than once. Everything else I've seen like one and done, one time. Which I'm sure I would, you know, I'm willing to go back and rewatch to see if my opinion changes over time. But a director that I appreciate, though I don't necessarily love. It's just like maybe not for me. Whereas he is your favorite director of all time. So, so we have different, you know, viewpoints on Paul Thomas Anderson, and I think that there's a couple of things that we might agree on when it comes to One Battle After Another, which is that I feel like this is far and away his most accessible film, where, you know, I think this movie has, especially with like the star power of DiCaprio, but also the story is like easy to digest, and the tone I think really works in its favor, to where this is like, you know, feels like a movie that could have like widespread mass appeal, which is I think why they're doing such a media blitz on this right now, where like, you know, these actors are everywhere right now trying to, you know, sell tickets. And I feel like this is like the movie that would do it or turn people over to Paul Thomas Anderson if there were, you know, not fans already. I also feel like this is his funniest film, again, maybe by a long shot, but a movie that I feel like really is like purposefully seeking a comedic tone, as opposed to like having, you know, comedy weaved in and out of a film. Like maybe like Boogie Nights has a lot of comedy, you know, in it, but is not like a comedy movie. Maybe Inherent Vice a little bit, though I would maybe argue that the comedy doesn't really work in that one. But I think it actually, you know, may strive for that. But you know, this movie is like very, very funny, and I feel like really works on the comedic front. For me, you know, the performance from Leonardo DiCaprio here playing, and you know, I mentioned that it is about like an ex-revolutionary who must rescue his daughter, but it really is very much like a father-daughter movie, where once they get kind of like separated, the movie sort of like really kind of ramps up into this sort of like, you know, like trying to find her, and like incorporates like a lot of like chase scenes, and you know, some funny series of events. It's like, for me, the movie like really kind of takes off once like Benicio del Toro shows up. I think that's the turning point in the movie for me, where, you know, I like the first act enough, and I think that there's a lot that works in it. I think that you know, there's some funny stuff and like some social commentary with, you know, the work that the revolutionaries are doing. You know, there's this very nefarious white supremacist group that, you know, there's some good humor derived from that, especially, you know, hiring someone like, you know, Jim Downey, as you know, famous like SNL writer, and as part of that group, I think that really helps that along a lot. But I feel like the movie really turns where, like, when Benicio del Toro shows up as someone who kind of like helps DiCaprio, you know, go through the process of trying to, you know, find and locate his daughter. And I just feel like there's like a 30-minute stretch that happens once he shows up, where the movie just like is like humming, like it's going, it's super entertaining. It's really funny. And like is really working at its best, during that stretch. The movie also features, towards the end, like a really great chase scene where I feel like the whole movie I'm kind of thinking like, this doesn't feel like a Paul Thomas Anderson movie very much, to me at least, in that, you know, whether it be like the tone or you know, what the movie is striving for, like it doesn't feel like a prestige like drama or a prestige movie just in general. It just feels like a really solid kind of like mainstream movie, in my opinion. But then like the chase scene happens, I won't give too much away, but like the way that scene is shot and executed, kind of sends it over the top and being like, oh, I've never seen anything like quite like this before. Which again is hard to like pull off in a movie, like doing something that legitimately I think you have not seen before. And that is all punctuated by what I think is like a really incredible score by frequent collaborator Johnny Greenwood, which really helps the movie kind of, sing a little bit. So yeah, I mean, for me, I found it to be really entertaining. I feel like, for a 3-hour movie, it kind of breezes by and doesn't feel as long as it is. I think it's like 2 hours and 50 minutes, and I don't think that it feels that long. I feel like DiCaprio is, again, doing like really great work. I think the whole cast is pretty good. DiCaprio and Del Toro, I think, are the best parts of the movie, but Chase Infinity playing his daughter is really solid as well. And yeah, and like I said, for me, my takeaway is, to me, this is the least PTA movie that I can recall seeing, where to me, it doesn't really feel like a movie that has too much of his fingerprints on it until you kind of get into the third act. And that's not a bad thing. I mean, in my opinion, I think it's a good thing, because I think that a lot of his work can be like difficult to digest a little bit, or maybe even like a little bit like polarizing. But I feel like this is like the smoothest thing that he's made so far, and something that I found enjoyable. And again, my takeaway, and this is not meant to be like an insult to the movie, but I feel like it's like as good of a mainstream kind of like movie that you can get. So like a really high quality, like way above average sort of like mainstream movie that, tiptoes into like heavier themes, but not enough to where it brings down the tone of the movie. So yeah, I had a good time with this one. Kiko, what are your thoughts on One Battle After Another?
Yeah, I'm happy that you liked it, because I know how kind of mixed P.T. Anderson is mixed results for you. I know you like Boogie Nights a lot, and I think Boogie Nights is still his funniest movie, but it's because I've seen it a million times probably, and I just laugh at the things that I've seen already. But what was getting me these past 2 or 3 months, and you brought it up, was just how much they were out there promoting this film, and maybe because it's the most expensive film PTA's made. I don't know what the final budget was, but they needed to definitely make their money back. I don't think they did amazingly well this weekend. I think it was somewhere like between like 20 and 25. So I mean, if we're talking like blockbuster type movie, I don't think it's going to get there. Hopefully, it'll make its money back on the worldwide. But who knows? Who knows what people want to see nowadays? They want the tentpole stuff, and which is understandable in the way that moviegoers are watching things during this time period, I guess. But the movie itself, I mean, I thought it was great. I love PTA. You said he was my favorite director, of course. That's been true for a while now. I'll put this somewhere. I put this somewhere like around 4th or 5th of his best. But I've the 1 through 4 is just like they're masterpieces to me. So this is just right underneath that. And I think that it might feel more accessible and less of a PTA movie, because we've never really seen him do anything like this. That's so like I like the word that you use, or the phrase that you use, that it just hums along, and that's a great way, because it starts off pretty slow, just the humming, the car moving kind of slow, and then all of a sudden it just gets a little bit more and starts revving its engine. And I think that's the way that it goes. It just starts at like at a 1, and then it just builds up all the way to a 10 to that car chase scene at the end. So what I really liked about it, it's just a nice balance between these intimate character studies, whether it's Leonardo DiCaprio or Sean Penn's character. It's a mix of that with like this really sweeping, what I thought felt like really epic historical picture. My only real criticism was I would have liked to have seen more things happening outside of their bubble, things that are happening during that time period, which time is another thing we can also spend all day talking about. Is the time kind of is almost like it's an interesting take of time, how P.T. Anderson kind of breaks this movie up, because I'm not really sure where in time we are at points,
Yeah.
Go ahead. You can talk about that a little bit if you want to jump in.
Well, I mean, I feel I had kind of like the same thought, but to me it feels like because of the way that the movie begins, this is more or less present day,
Right.
based
But
on
it
sort.
feels, it could, I mean, you could argue that, oh, is this set in the like 70s? Like this is, because a lot of those, the type of groups that Leonardo and his friends are in you would see more of those back then, right? So,
Yes,
so
but
I think,
also, like the whole their whole sort of like mission early on is basically like breaking people out of detention centers,
correct.
immigrants out of detention centers, and it's in like the villains of these movies is like a white supremacist group, so
Hmm.
it feels very of the times for
It,
sure.
it does. It does now, and I think my wife went, and like the first 20 minutes, she turned to me. She's like, "Wow, this is going to be very controversial,"
Hmm.
like right away,
Sure.
because it's right. And I don't think it's PTA's fault that he's releasing this movie in such a polarizing times, especially in the past few weeks. That a lot of these things are happening, and then all of a sudden, boom, we're right in the middle of it in this movie, and it's like, whoa, like it kind of hits you. It kind of reminded me of like when the Joker was first released, and I know you didn't like that movie, but
Yeah.
it kind of was released at a really inopportune time in terms of what things are happening at that particular instance in society. And this feels the same way, where it's kind of feels a little bit dangerous at the beginning. But again, the tone of it, the feels dangerous, but then at the same time you throw in this humor, this really sharp humor that comes in different ways, like the way that I can't remember her name. It starts with a P. The character
Oh, Perfidium.
Perfidia meets Sean Penn's Lockjaw. Um, it's just a funny scene the way that it works. So I think it's a nice balance between that really heightened emotion with this kind of comedy that's coming in little by little. So I thought all the central performances, or all the performances in general, but central performances were really nuanced. I think this is one of Leonardo DiCaprio's best roles of his career. He should probably get an Oscar nomination for this.
I think so.
Gonna say that, and maybe Sean Penn too. He's kind of he's hamming it up here, but not to the point where I don't know. I would call it a hammy performance, but it's really really like a solid performance. So I can't like take any points off of him for throwing it out there just the way that he does. Like there's just little things that he does, whether it's his gait and the way he walks, the way he speaks, the way he combs his hair. There's one scene where like he's in the elevator and he licks his comb to comb his hair, and I'm not sure how much of that was in the actual script or how much he created that on his own, but it was just really really fine performances from both of them. As per the usual of PTA, I thought the screenplay was just really, really tight. I don't think there was any wasted dialogue or anything like that. I mean, the scenes where he's on the phone, there's a few scenes where Leonardo's on the phone just talking, and it's just like really, really sharp dialogue and just gets to the point, and it's really funny, and it's it really held my attention a lot. Let's see, what else do we want to talk about? The score, you brought up the score, amazing score by Johnny Greenwood. I loved it. Amazing cinematography. There's a scene where there's some kids jumping across the rooftops. Beautifully shot. I love the way that looked. I just think that the entire film just built all this tension up really organically. And it's, again, I've never seen PTA really do a car chase scene before. So if you had told me like 10 years ago, oh, I can't wait to see PTA's car chase scene, I probably would have thought that you were crazy. But I did hear somebody say the other day, or maybe I read it, where PTA would be the only director who could pull off a car chase scene where there's 3 cars involved and none of them change lanes, and it'll still be very exciting. And that's basically what happens here. So if you want to bring that or say that's a lot different than what you would get from a mainstream movie, then I would totally agree with you. But yeah, the action sequences, I mean, again, I agree with you again when that you're saying that it's very accessible. Yes, but I think there's a lot more to this film in terms of just the style. I wouldn't like consider it like just a summer blockbuster type movie. I think there's a lot more than that, and I think that's probably why people. I don't think this movie is going to be, when it comes to like word of mouth, I don't think people are like going out there and like, boom, you got to go see this movie, telling their friends to go out there and check it out. It's not like a James Bond movie or something like that are, that you usually get around, well, I mean, it's not even summertime, but anyway, they're pushing it as a, I guess, a blockbuster type thing. But the direction, just overall, I think this is the best directed film I've seen all year, and that's, I mean, I'm being biased, but there's a lot of a great scenario, great shots and decisions that PTA makes in terms of just using all these these complex characters and kind of putting them against these amazing motifs, throughout the entire film. So I think, I thought it was just a strong piece of filmmaking overall, and I'm really glad that it didn't end up as a minor. I wouldn't consider this a minor PTA film like Licorice Pizza, which is a movie that I liked but didn't love. And I definitely don't think it's anywhere at the bottom of the rung as Inherent Vice, which was one of the reasons I was very nervous about this, because they're both being adapted by Thomas Pynchon film books. So, but I'm glad that didn't happen either. So, overall, I thought that all the characters worked together very well. It's very exciting. It kept me very interested and very entertained throughout the 2 hours and 50 minutes that I watched everything unfold on screen, and so so it's great.
Yeah, and just to kind of like clarify a little bit, so this movie is like loosely based on Thomas Pynchon's movie Vineland, and that book, or I should say book, not movie. It's based on Thomas Pynchon's book novel Vineland, which is basically set in like the Reagan years, and like the sort of like political topic it covers is like the war on drugs and like the things happening in terms of like the rebellion,
right,
in the decade of the 80s from like, I guess, like boomers and stuff like that. And so I think for that reason, this is definitely not that. There's plot lines about a character having a cell phone. So like, I mean, obviously that's not
right.
what's going on. So I mean, I think it does speak to sort of like maybe his, present day or his adaptation of this is bringing it into the issues of today. And I think that's when it's kind of like meant to take place. But, we'll get to final thoughts and grades. So for me, I mean, when we're talking about Paul Thomas Anderson movies, again, my rankings are not to be trusted because I'm not like the biggest fan in the world. But, I think this is like probably in my top 3 PTA movies. I don't think it surpasses Boogie Nights. I think that remains my favorite. But, this is just a really well-crafted and executed film. And it taps into something I feel like we have not seen from Paul Thomas Anderson before. And that is the ability to create like a really fun, entertaining romp. And I don't mean that in any derogatory way at all. Like, it is just a fun movie. And it's really engaging, really entertaining. And I agree with you. I think this is one of the best performances of DiCaprio's career. And I feel like, he showed it like several times before, but especially in like Wolf of Wall Street, he kind of tapped into that comedic side a little bit. And this is him going like all in on comedy, where he is extremely funny in this movie. You described like, scenes when he's on the phone, and like there's some really funny stuff when he's like trying to call and get connected with this group that he's become, kind of moved away from for a really long time and trying to get back into it. And, there's a lot of funny stuff there. There's a lot of funny like paranoia stuff when he's interacting with Benicio del Toro. And I just feel like it's DiCaprio's performance is one of the best of the year so far. And then for me, like I said, I don't think that this movie is like hard to crack into like a lot of Anderson's other stuff. And I also feel like it's just the word I would use is like digestible, where I feel like a lot of his stuff maybe isn't digestible. I feel like this is, and it goes down really smooth and is really enjoyable. And like I said, if we're talking about, and you know what, I mean, I say mainstream movie, I mean, this is a major studio release. It's released by Warner Brothers. So it is a mainstream movie that cost somewhere between $130 and $175 million to make. So, this is not an independent film. And I feel like when we're talking about a mainstream major studio movie, this is kind of like, near the top of how good these things can get, I think. Especially when we're talking about like movies that could have studio interference or whatever. So yeah, I'm giving this a B plus, a really solid movie. Is it the best thing I've seen this year? I don't know. It's probably one of the best 3 movies I've seen this year. There are 3 to 4 movies. Will it make my top 10? Maybe. But as it stands right now, just very, very solid, very enjoyable, and I had a really great time with it. So your final thoughts and grade.
Yeah. I think that this stands out as one of PTA's most masterful films, and again, easily his most accessible. I think it balanced this intensity with a lot of emotional depth from all these characters. It's easily the best directed film of the year so far, and it has the best score. It has the best cinematography too. So if those are kind of things that you care about or enjoy, then this is definitely for you. Not to mention all the nuanced performances that deliver a lot of humanity from every scene, and the comedy, of course, is up there as PTA's one of his most funniest films. So if you are a fan of PTA, you are going to be very happy with this. If you're not familiar with a lot of his work, I would definitely say that this was something that might be a little bit different than his other stuff that's a little bit more artsy. This is more on the mainstream level, but really has a lot of I guess the you said you don't see his fingerprints on some of it. I saw his fingerprints on a lot of it. So if you like some of the choices he makes directorially, then you'll definitely get your money's worth with this one. So I am giving this an A minus, and I wouldn't be surprised if it ended up somewhere between 1 and 5 this year in my top 10. But we'll see. There's a lot of movies to be seen in the next few months.
For sure. All right. Well, then we will move on to the second and final movie of this week's episode, All of You. All of You is a film that was directed by William Bridges, with a screenplay that was co-written with William Bridges and Brett Goldstein, who is also in the lead role. I think a lot of people know Brett Goldstein for his role on Ted Lasso. He plays Roy Kent in the TV show. Back-to-back Emmy award-winning actor for that show, and this is a movie that was released on Apple TV Plus, the home of Ted Lasso. And the movie starts off frustratingly, and I'll circle back to this, with like this sci-fi kind of concept of the idea in the movie is that there's a company that offers a test, and this test is basically something that's like scientifically identifies you with your soulmate. And so when people are tired of dating, they'll just go take the test, they'll get connected with their soulmate, and that's who they're, meant to be with forever. And so there's a character played by named Simon, played by Brett Goldstein, who is like has a platonic best friend named Laura, played by Imogen Poots, and they are basically, he has like a long-standing sort of like crush on her, but pays for her to get the test, and she ends up getting the test and getting connected with a soulmate. And then the movie basically shows like a series of years that pass by over the course of their relationship, of this sort of like connection that they have, where they try to remain friends through both moving on, but yet he is still connected and in love with her, and she's kind of struggling with feelings that she has, and it kind of like goes through that ordeal. I think this movie is like supremely frustrating, because I feel like there is a lot of humor in like the first act of the movie, where I feel like some of the dialogue is like sharp and clever, and I like the conversations, I like the dry humor of it. I think that Brett Goldstein's kind of writes himself as like a very sarcastic character in person, and I feel like there's like decent enough chemistry between him and Imogen Poots, and then I feel like the movie kind of like loses it a little bit, and I feel like there's a couple of things that work towards this. Number one is, I wish that this movie explored its premise a little bit more, where this idea of like, you know, a soulmate matching company or whatever, where you take the test, like it's really just like a plot device, right? It's not anything that has like any real exploration to it or any type of, you know, real deeper meaning, it seems.
Yeah, we're not asking for an eternal sunshine here, but I mean, at least give us something.
Yeah, there's not a lot of meat on the bone here, which is like, again, you introduce this like interesting-ish, you know, premise, but you don't really do a whole lot with it. You know, there's I don't know if you remember the movie like The Adjustment Bureau, but that's an example of where like that movie I think is like better than a lot of people think it is, but like it's at least an interesting idea, right?
Yeah,
Which is
I remember liking that movie.
yeah, which is like a high concept, or sorry, that doesn't mean what I think it does. I always forget that. But like an interesting concept that that is like a sci-fi idea of like, I forget what the whole thing with that movie is, but it's sort of like you have like a predetermined or predestined uh, you know, like pipeline that your life is going to follow, and you know they deviate from it, and this is basically a film that that doesn't really do anything with its premise beyond that. I also feel like I kind of hate both of these characters and the actions that they take. Where, you know, I saw a lot of like reviews, and this movie is being reviewed relatively positively, and a lot of reviews say that it's exploring like monogamy, and or like the idea that like it's pushing back against the idea that like any person has any one soulmate, or you know, or you know, again, like pushing that like love is just reserved or saved for one person or something like that. But if it is trying to explore that, I feel like there's ways to explore that without making your main character like do some like
Pretty shitty
not
things.
yeah, pretty shitty and shady things, where, you know, like there's a lot of stuff going on behind people's back. There's a lot of very clear and intentional infidelity, and none of it is really seen as like a negative within the movie. And I guess maybe that says more about the audience member passing judgment on it. But again, like I feel like it's not it's just like people behaving in kind of shitty ways, and I feel like I'm not really rooting for this relationship, because I feel like they're both going about it in really kind of like unhealthy ways. I just found myself not, and I feel like this movie, you know, especially when it gets kind of like sappy and manipulative and emotional, I feel like you have to be on board with this relationship and really want it to pan out. And I never really felt that way. And then by the time that, you know, the real drama starts kicking in, it feels like melodrama. I don't think that it feels real or authentic. And my biggest thing I always say with these types of movies is that the emotion doesn't feel earned for me, especially given, again, the behaviors of its characters, who start off as like, you know, likable as friends, and then immediately, you know, I think by the end, well, not immediately, but by the end of the film, eventually I should say, become pretty unlikable. And like I said, I wasn't really rooting for this whole thing to kind of pan out the way that I think the movie wants you to. So for me, I don't think that there's enough depth with the exploration of its ideas and premise, nor do I think there's enough depth in the exploration of modern relationships and whatever this thing is trying to say about it. So for me, this was a pretty big disappointment. I'll go ahead and go to you for your thoughts.
Yeah, I totally agree. The melodramatics, I don't even know if that's a word, but the melodrama here was pretty heavy-handed, especially as the film continued on into some pretty weird places, I thought. I think that the chemistry between them was fine at the beginning when they were friends, but once they got involved with each other, it just got really messy, and the dialogue kind of got stilted. In my opinion, I agree with you with the kind of banter that they were having at the beginning was pretty sweet and harmless. It just got way too serious as it moved forward, and very predictable. I mean, I don't think there was any scene where I didn't see coming, especially like at the end. I won't give too much away, but there's a couple of scenes where I was just like, oh, this is gonna happen next. I'll just tell you like one scene where she has to get on the phone and he goes swimming. Like, come on, that was obvious what was gonna happen right there after he comes back from swimming. So things like that. There was at least 2 or 3 instances in the movie where I knew exactly what was gonna happen before it happened. I think that the sci-fi aspect was not at all expanded on that where it needed to be. I'm thinking that maybe it would have helped if there was a couple of like secondary storylines or something that was showing other people's experience, kind of to show what other people are experiencing compared to this couple, because the idea of this soulmate thing didn't really make any sense logically in my mind. Like I just kept thinking about all these scenarios. It made it seem like everybody's relationships are perfect, right? And it's impossible. That would be impossible if this machine or this test put two people together, or put, what was it? They had a running number in the background. Sometimes you could see like how many people had taken the test, and I think I saw it go up to maybe like 60 or 70 million. So you're telling me that there's 30 million couples out there that are perfectly matched because of this test? I don't buy it, especially since what happens here. I could kind of tell, like, maybe they're going after that theme and about monogamy and how soulmates don't really exist. So depending on how you feel about that, there's a lot of there's a polarizing. When you ask somebody about soulmates, if they're married, usually they'll say that there are soulmates, and most single people probably don't think so. But the best thing, I guess, of this movie was Imogen Poots. I thought she did a fine job of carrying her character. I wasn't very familiar with the gentleman. I've never watched. Tell me again what he's in. He's in
Ted Lasso.
Ted Lasso. So yeah, now that you mention it, I do recognize his face, and I do remember him winning that Emmy that he did. So I just thought it was a very awkward pairing in my opinion, and I just didn't feel any of the emotional pull that either of them brought to their relationship as it continued. And yeah, again, I totally agree with you when it comes to the fact that these are just two people that should know better, doing things that they shouldn't be doing.
Yeah.
And by doing that, it's very hard to root for them moving forward, and you're just kind of watching them make mistakes, and it's not very interesting as it goes forward. I would have rather them have stayed out of the quote unquote test, and just kind of watch them maneuver their friendship around all these people around them getting tested, and see how that works. But when it gets to the melodrama and them kind of connecting and seeing how things are going to work, it felt very, very soap opera-y. So yeah, I wasn't a fan of this film at all.
Yeah. All right. Well, we'll get into final thoughts and grades. And yeah, I mean, again, for me, the biggest, problem with a movie like this, which is like a sappy romantic drama, is, I think you have to want to at least root for something with these characters, wanting them to be together, or, going through the journey with them. And I think the film just sort of alienates the audience a little bit by putting these characters in positions where, like you said, they should know better than this, but they do these things anyway. And yeah, you could argue that that's the messiness of people, but also at the same time, it's a choice, right? They're making the choice for these characters to act in this way. So if you respond negatively to it, that's a result of the choices that are made, and it just doesn't really feel believable. And I feel like the way that Imogen Poots' character is written, I just feel like she goes too back and forth and on a lot of this stuff, and in her. And I just feel like that character, if it's something about the idea that yes, this person is my soulmate, but I'm not as into them as I feel like I should be. Again, the movie doesn't do enough legwork to hammer those points home. And so what you end up getting is someone just sort of committing infidelity very casually, which I feel fine if you want to, you can choose to not pass judgment on that or take it for what it is. But I think it makes it really hard to root for this romance. And I think the movie wants you to, because by the end of it, it's supposed to be heart-wrenching and, devastating, or whatever you want to call it. So for me, it just doesn't work. I think there's some early stuff that's pretty good. I do like the performances in it. I think some of the script is clever. But for me, it's kind of like a wasted idea. So for me, this is a C. Your final thoughts and grade.
Yeah, I'll just start with the logic of the film. It doesn't make sense. This test that these soulmates are taking, they needed to dive way deeper into the idea than they actually did. So there was no clear artistic vision from the writing, in my opinion, just to set it up. The foundation wasn't there, so it felt very generic as it continued. You delve into this muddled story, and it kind of never finds its like emotional core. So I think that most of the film is in the second half is built on a lot of this forced sentimentality, and there's no real character development or character relationship development between the two. I think that it feels contrived and overall just very forgettable romantic comedy, if you want to call it that. I guess it would be more of a romantic dramedy because I didn't find it particularly funny. So I am on the same wavelength as you, Cody, and I'm giving this a solid C as well.
All right. And that's going to do it for this week. So next week, we have the potential for a pretty big show because there's a lot coming out. What we have coming out, first and foremost, is The Smashing Machine, the A24 MMA movie that you and I have both seen already, and that is releasing wide. We also have the return from retirement for Daniel Day-Lewis coming out, a movie called Anemone that was directed by his son, I believe. He came out of retirement for his son, and that movie comes out, as well as a movie called Good Boy, which I believe is like a sci-fi horror through the perspective of a dog, if I'm not mistaken.
Correct.
In addition to that, there's a couple of streaming movies coming out, including The Lost Bus, a movie directed by Paul Greengrass of, I guess we'll call it like Bourne fame, directing 3 entries in the Bourne movies, also director of like United 93, Captain Phillips, and that movie stars Matthew McConaughey and America Ferrera. And then we also have VHS Halloween, the latest in the anthology movie series on Shudder, which I watched at Fantastic Fest a few days ago. So,
am I gonna have to catch up with all the VHS movies? I don't think I've seen all of them, all of the franchise.
No. So, so for anyone out there who doesn't know, VHS is an anthology series that features 4 to 5 short films by all different directors, stitched together, supposed to be like a compilation tape of all found footage horror stuff. And it's been the launching pad for a lot of like really big horror directors, and a lot of people have gotten work from that, or a lot of like high profile people have made shorts for that. This one, I've not to spoil too much, but this was the first full-length one I've watched at the festival. So I jumped right into the 8th movie of the franchise and was just fine.
Okay, you've never even seen the original?
No, I haven't. I haven't seen... Okay. I've seen segments of a few of them, yeah. But I've never seen one all the way through before this one.
Yeah. I think the only one I have seen is the original, so...
Yeah, I mean, I think I was looking at the Wikipedia page just to read a little bit more about one of the ones that I actually really liked from that segment, from the VHS Halloween, and got caught in a little bit of a rabbit hole on that, and it, the reviews have been pretty mixed on these movies, but there have been ones that like, so the first VHS that you saw was 56% on Rotten Tomatoes, but VHS 94, 90%. VHS Beyond 89%. So
they found their footing. They found the I guess the what works for it, I guess.
Yeah, and the last 1, 2, 3, the last 4 have been fresh on Rotten Tomatoes, and VHS Halloween, I believe, is like trending that way up until this point. And so, yeah, I think there's at least a couple of them in there that I feel like you will really like. Or at least appreciate.
I'm looking up VHS Halloween, and they have a stylized way to write the title. Have you seen it?
Yes. I like that.
There's a lot of what are they, backslashes, I guess?
Yeah. I mean, it is a slasher, so there you go. All right, so if you want to reach out to us, you can find us at CineSnob anywhere that you have social media. You can also subscribe to our YouTube channel, where we've got all of the episodes of this podcast, as well as a library of interviews that the most recent one is your interview with Ron Howard for Eden. But yeah, I mean, there's a lot of interviews on here with a lot of views on it. So it's cool to see people checking out our YouTube channel. And you can also go to CineSnob.net, where you can find all of these reviews in clip format. So if you don't want to listen to a full episode, or you don't want anything spoiled, you can go to the website, find the movie you want to find a review for, and click pretty easily. And yeah, anything else to add, or anything that you want people to check out that you've been writing, Kiko?
No, I think we're good right now. Yeah, but I'm just again glad to be back after a small hiatus on my end. But looking forward to seeing a lot more movies in the next few months.
Yeah, we're about to head full throttle into award season here, so the next couple of months should hopefully be exciting and interesting. You know, we've got some high profile award stuff coming out soon. I mean, we've got what do we have? We've got like After the Hunt coming out soon. I think that's the new Luca Guadagnino. We've got the Bruce Springsteen movie coming out in October. We've got, I think, 2 Richard Linklater movies coming out. I think they're both coming out this year, if I'm not mistaken. So yeah, I'm super curious to see how this goes. And if nothing else, we'll be back next week with a horror movie about a dog. Is it horror or sci-fi?
It's horror thriller.
Okay, cool. Yeah. All right. So thanks everyone for listening, and we will see you next time.
Thank you for listening to the CineSnob Podcast. To read reviews, interviews, and more, visit CineSnob.net. See you next week.